So dopamine is a frequently discussed neuro-modulator. People talk about it so much because it's important to our motivation or behavior, but it's important to understand what it is and what it isn't. Dopamine is the molecule of drive and wanting, and dopamine levels are spiked when you're in the pursuit of a goal. At the end of that pursuit lies serotonin. Serotonin is a molecule of achievement, and it has that satiation. And because we're all in the pursuit of limitless productivity, it's important that we understand dopamine and how it affects our behavior. One of the important mechanisms to know about dopamine is random and intermittent reward. So there's a story about two groups of mice. One group of mice that's put in the bucket of water and let swim for as long as they can. They usually end up swimming for about 15 minutes before they drown. The second group is allowed to swim, but they're pulled out right before the 15-minute mark. They're pulled out, they're dried, they're fed, they're pet, and then they're put back in. After they've been dried, you'd think that maybe they could go for another 30 minutes, another 45 minutes. Once they're put in, they end up going for an extra 48 hours. When given intermittent reward, the body will secrete large amounts of dopamine, which allow you to work longer and through longer droughts of reward. Casinos have relied on your body's response to this random intermittent reward for decades. They think that when you sit at the gambling table, you'll sit longer if they give you small periodic rewards, and so that's actually a trick about how they get you to sit and gamble for longer. Mechanism number 2 we're going to talk about is layering sources of dopamine. Layering dopamine sources temporarily might increase your levels of dopamine, but it causes you to crash afterwards. Your body is not intelligent enough to identify where the sources of dopamine are coming from. This means that if you listen to music while you're studying, your body might crave only for music the next time that you have to do deep work, instead of the satisfaction of completing the work. It can be helpful to study or work out with music to really reset your baseline levels of dopamine. Establish healthy baseline levels of dopamine. Now, this is the problem with drug addicts. Usually you see that the dopamine response that the drug addict experiences is relatively cyclic between when they hit and when they're craving. The thing that changes and destroys their life is that their baseline level of dopamine increases. Keeping a healthy baseline level of dopamine can help us manage sensation and satiation to dopamine. For managing your baseline dopamine levels, tip number 1 is to absorb direct sunlight in the morning, and that will help give you a flat baseline throughout the day of dopamine. Number 2, we're going to say avoid melatonin supplements. Although they can be good for resetting your sleep schedule if it gets out of whack due to irregular schedule or from jet lag, but it's important not to rely on it because it does suppress your levels of dopamine over time. And thirdly, we're going to talk about caffeine. About 100 to 400 milligrams of caffeine every day can help, again, keep a consistent flat level of dopamine and keep you motivated today. The important thing is that you don't continue to ingest that caffeine after 2 p.m. Now, in some extreme circumstances, if you're doom scrolling or you have other supernormal stimuli that have really hijacked your dopamine system, it may be necessary to go through a dopamine detox or prolonged periods of abstaining from dopamine in order to reset your system. This might mean switching to a dumb phone or taking a step away from technology as a whole.